Welcome back to The Unpopular Opinion, Becoming Popular. My name is Yana the Heretic, and this week we discuss the most mystical and mysterious of all godheads in the rave mandala. This is the last chunk of our Quarter of Mutation, so the next 4 weeks are going to be under this archetype, which is called the Keepers of the Wheel. And these aren't just actual faces that we know of. These are the beings from the liminal, the underground, and in between or betwixt spaces, the ones that silently, run the entire movement, the rhythm of the sphere. And without them, the entire system would collapse. The universal flow may not be flowing without these keepers. And whether that be the beings of time, the planets, actual people in the universal scheme of things, there is really no one answer to who these keepers are and what they look like and what they actually do. It's just knowing that everything is still flowing in this cycle, and we are still having the sun rise and set and the moon come out and perform its cycles throughout our calendar. So we're really taking the external transformations, how we've been practicing acting as different people, and really acting from a new place of maybe we've taken something on in the external that has taught us something about ourselves, or we started to go down a different path externally. Now this last quarter is about processing it internally, so we can therefore trace back in our system, in our patterning, how we've actually been transformed, and to be an inner witness of this process, to have specifically this inner truth come out, and be able to be silent and perceive the next stages. As we have transformed, now we are going to act and become. So this is gate 61 in our ajna, and it is, in our head center. And our head center is all about answering questions. And this gate is called the gate of mystery, the gate of inner truth. So we're really answering questions, the ultimate questions. But it's not really us that is answering these questions. Truly, it is just keeping silent in order to get the epiphany that we're looking for, or the state of Satori, or really having a download, so this is the exact time frame to be able to do that. And I will reference the material that I wrote mostly because I do want these words to really hit. So I will be reading just the beginning of this, so that everything that it took me a while to write this, so I guess maybe it's because I have this specific gate, but it is more potent in writing. So I'm just gonna read a little bit of what I wrote. Now we enter the most mysterious godhead in the rave mandala. The keepers of the wheel operate underground in between spaces. They're born from the liminal fabric. The which ways our planet moves, it dances, it aches. These rhythms can be traced throughout time and etched into the land and air. The energy of past highways, buildings, monuments, the old churches where phantom praises can still be heard and felt. These places were all created by the past beings, created for a role in the universal plane. And even beyond human life, the elements chasing each other's tail in feats of power and competition. There's no better way to end the Quarter of Mutation than by honoring the bigger picture of mutation itself. As we at last can see how mutation has been etched in time energetically. That we exist only because of the past pillars of our genetic lineage. That the Akashic Record is powered by something ineffable. Gate 61 begins and ends simultaneously. One mystery revealed relieves the head pressure, but is yet abundant with many more, birthing more questions at the seams. Perhaps we begin to see the skeleton key that hides behind the framework of our personal walls. The sphere turns into something much more transparent than the elements can even portray. The head gate is always seeking the answers to life's most challenging questions. For instance, what are we here for on this planet really? Where did the human race really come from? How did the ancients erect temples with large slabs of rock? What else can our blood tell us about ourselves? So this is what Gate 61s typically seek out in life. These ultimate questions that we've all been waiting for the answers to. I know this because Graham Hancock spends his whole life on it, right? So these are questions that we're still trying to understand, and we're digging, these archaeological sites in order to really find the truths of the plains and the history of, the Egyptians or the Mayans, or, lineages that we don't even remember in time. There's so many books that were burned. There's so many theologies that were unwritten, and we're hoping to receive these downloads, especially people in more of the conscious communities. They're hoping to receive these answers, and we all hope to receive some type of answers to the world's biggest questions during meditation, or our own personal rituals that we do, so that we can apply these philosophies in our own life or be able to comprehend them. So yeah, this is really, really a beautiful time to sit in inner silence, because maybe you don't typically have this gate in your head, and maybe your head is defined and you feel like you have all these rigid frameworks on how you question things. Maybe you're a fixed air sign like an Aquarius, and you feel that you know things or how the world is really run because you have logistically studied it, or you've been in you apply logic and rationality to the way you think. Rationality really comes in at the harmonic, which is gate 24, the gate of rationalization, or the return. So that is the way to apply it to the ajna, since it is the channel that hitches the ajna and the head center together at the very center of those energy portals. And the channel of awareness is not online this week, but it is something that is extremely potent. You know, we see like lots of gurus potentially have this channel where they have changed the way that people think, you know, and the downside of it is that we consider the truth that is external, the truth that is coming from other people and the way that other people think. Perhaps it inspires us so deeply and we choose to act on the exact same framework as those that have passed, or, you know, books of others. Perhaps we get so inspired, but the reality is that we're beings that are meant to transform things, you know, or to apply it to our lives and not completely follow the steps of others to the T. This is the inner truth that is possible, is by, you know, applying pieces. You know, that's generally how, like, me personally as a heretic, it makes sense to apply different pieces of philosophies, you know, and gather them together and really see what the gold is in all of these theologies or spiritual quests, or, you know, even the way that, you know, the electrical grid is applying it to different logics. Like, these epiphanies come to you because you're the one that's meant to really create a new form of something, you know, something that is universal. So this is an individual gate and channel, but it is still applied. Like, your individual knowing can inspire the entire world and the universal. So these are people that are extreme individuals that are, you know, being seen for the way that they can process truths and information, and to be able to deliver it as well, because the 24 being a part of it can really start to categorize the way that this is, or create this framework for how, you know, you can take on a spiritual quest or put it into a mandala or a graph, or, you know, a study in modules that is separated, you know, or you read this book from start to finish, you know, because that's the way it was meant to be read. So without the 24, the 61 is capable of just, you know, really having that freedom to explore many theologies, or, you know, spiritualities or truths, and they don't really need to solve it, and it can be something that flares up the curiosity, you know, within, and really keep you being in that mystical state of just appreciating the ineffable. That statement of, all I know is that I know nothing, and that the real mystery is death and life itself. That is plays a huge role for this particular transit. And putting it into words actually took me a moment, because it's so grandiose to even really be legible. So we see inner truth become a deficiency in society when we look at the way that patriarchal governing has really taken it, and the lengths that it has been taken, because there is this logical, like, pattern to how to pray, or what to say, or the mantras have to be said this particular way, or else you're not opening this portal to spirituality. But the reality is that, you know, the more that you follow the agency of rules and governing in order to control, the less you know yourself, because you're not allowing these, like, personal downloads to happen. You keep on hoping that the amount of mantras or prayers that you do will really give you what you want, but sometimes we don't let our own personal perception to really be applied to this. We see that in a lot of Jungian psychology, or, you know, the have this book by Marie von France about alchemy and the stages of alchemy, and they talk about how dream states are supposed to be symbolic, and they take out a lot of these pieces of the dream state in order to create this kind of universal one linear perception. You know, oh, you had a dream about a cross. Well, this means this. But realistically, to each person, it means its own thing. And to completely take out your own perception and hitch a ride on others is where it becomes this delusion. It doesn't ground the logic in the mind, and the way to answer these questions doesn't really feel satisfactory to a lot of us, especially Gate 61s, because the ineffable, you know, will shed its light upon you in the right moments of silence. And sometimes we try to force that. You know, there's a lot of monks that also force the silence. They'll sit in meditation for their entire life, and perhaps they will get certain states of tranquility and the answer in these big moments. But even traveling the mountain and going up the mountain every day may not give you the same effect if you do it day to day. Perhaps you get less. You know, it's really how do these moments hit you, and what states do they actually hit you? And that's why meditation is a huge asset or tool to these people, and to every one of us, truly, whether it be active meditation like yoga or tai chi, or it be non-active, like just sitting or lying or being in nature and allowing yourself to just not think, you know, and it like really kind of starts to level into the feeling and into the heart and into the lower centers. You know, you don't try to force a logic on what's going on. You're just allowing other streams of consciousness to come in. Perhaps it's the plant that's next to you, the grass, the trees. You know, everything has its own knowledge if we actually silence our own mind, in order to hear it, you know. And you can find this beautiful Satori experience in just like the mundane states sometimes. And it's like, wow, I was really looking for that, and I was trying to force it, and then the universe told me to just let go, and I like let that thing go, and you know, I went on my own road, and it taught me something else that I had to let go in that moment. So yeah, you know, the hard truth is pushing logic in order to write down these structures, and really they're not meant to be written down. They're meant to be really what's transforming us internally, fully. So I would suggest really being able to sit and meditate in this beautiful field, this transit. It's going to be from January 10th till the 16th. And to really perceive the world around you and your place within this wheel, because this is on the cross of the Maya. So this is individual, but it's really seeing how the rhythms of life apply to you, or how they don't apply to you, or how you cast your own rhythm into the wheel, because whatever you do still plays a huge role in the universal. And yeah, really take what your teachers have to say. Maybe you explore, like allow yourself to explore things, but really kind of deduce your own way of acting on these things. And it's really meant to be open and free. It's not meant to just be piercing and intense. And discipline is always something that is needed, and practice discipline, but don't be so antagonizing on how it's done. Even the magicians say, if you're following the methods of old to the T and you're freaking out that you didn't wear the right color or something, or you may not have the correct spice exactly, you're not meant to freak out. Just work with what you have going on, and the will and the mysterious will come in, and create its own formula. So that is what is possible here. Music is a high regard for these people, and perhaps these are humans who find the acoustics, they're comfortable in the acoustics of life. So music can either put you into a tranquil place, or guided meditation, or the way that people say things, the way that certain voices have an effect on you and your system. And meditation music, or hitting a gong, or finding the right musical equipment to heal your body, or frequencies, just being able to play with that, to get yourself into that state of mind. This is really important. Music shifts the way that we do things. It is something that people consider to be an act of possession. It possesses our bodies to do something, and we really feel it. Genres, we really feel genres. So and how does that apply to also silence? Do you ever take breaks from music and perceive the acoustics of what's going on around you as well, instead of constantly flooding your field with music? So yeah, the ability here is establishing the within and without, the as above so below region. And to be really humbled by this state is to understand how the godly plays a role within your own self, how you are an archetype within archetypes. But also understanding that you aren't always God all the time, that you're not meant to control, the organic field. You're not meant to control nature. That's really maybe not up to you. And I think that a lot of people should think about that, because there's definite ways that our world wants to control nature and the waters, and how the waters flow, and how the air is being treated by things to prevent certain weather. Maybe we need to go through that weather and not hide or burrow, because there is a tendency to lie to ourselves. We all know how the dark night of the soul really plays a huge role, and how we hide from ourselves and distract ourselves with stimulation. We go home, maybe we're listening to a podcast in the car through our Bluetooth, and then we're listening to a show in the background or music when we get home. What is keeping us from really just hearing our own channel? Are we always constantly in need of knowledge or somebody else's words? Are we starting to build our personality based off of what other people say? Or the way that people act in shows. Those are actors for a reason. That's not real life, really. So what gets us addicted to regurgitating other people? That's really the not self of the head center, is we're answering questions that come from other people's sources and not your own inner truth. And we tend to erect the not self when we start to do those things. We lie. We don't even consciously know that we do, because it seems so natural to just hitch a ride on other people's thought waves, or we just prefer that type of personality, so we just become that personality, even though it doesn't really apply to how we feel, think, to our heart. So the silence is meant to expose those things, and yeah, it can be extremely uncomfortable to process the heaviness, but that is in itself what this time is for, is to transform the internal, so that you don't act upon the life of falsehood or fallacy for yourself, and distract ourselves from our life's work. So how can we unearth that and try to live a life outside of distraction, outside of screens and constant screen time, constant Bluetooth time, or even agreeing with everything that your friends, colleagues, teachers, mentors tell you, or pastors, or whoever. This hexagram looks like an opening at the center because the two yang lines are at the very center. So it is considered to be connecting to the source, because it is capturing the essence of something that is of value to you. You finally captured, in your grips what you're meant to connect to and hold on to. It is something of value. It's a secret that you're trying to keep to yourself because it's for you. I recommend observing and exploring it to its nth degree, and to value it. And I hope that you add silence into your schedule and find the beauty that is you, that you seek, and unearth some of the falseness that you've been living under. Because pain is really tricky and it keeps us from the truth, because we wish to consume things that hide us or distract us from processing pain or humility, and we really begin to see later in life how off track we have been. So, questions of the week. How often do you sit in silence? Do you constantly need some form of distraction from your thoughts? How can you find the strength to fully process the heaviness you hide yourself from? How can you ground down into feeling from the heart in order to balance yourself? Is your logic fixed? What herbal aids do you have that can create flexibility in your membranes? So I think that the Aquarian age is very beneficial because it is extreme individual a sense of truth, and it is advanced, and now we're advancing as a society, and it's all coming from an individual place. That's why there's a lot of arguments or debates happening about how things should be done, and arguments about the future. So I don't think it's wrong to embrace the Aquarian fixed logic, but I think it's also nice to put it down. And there's a lot of herbal aids for the heavy mental pressure that the fixed logic can do to you. So I'm talking about specific teas, maybe tinctures, not just like ganja all the time. But yeah, what are your herbal aids that can ease the head pressure? How do acoustics play a role in your life? Do you find music to be too distracting, or does it help you read, study, feel calm? Why is background noise so addicting to society? What are the pros and cons of constant stimulation? Do you feel smarter, funnier, more appealing by listening to others' words and regurgitating their life answers? Is being with the times actually important to you? Do you think you'll be phased out, lost, forgotten if you don't hitch a ride on some silly universal functioning? Do you have to be on Instagram? Do you have to do AI? Do you have to have a smart car? Do you have to have Wi-Fi? Or else you feel deficient somehow? These are all like really important questions, and I'm a real ass person, so sit with these, and I hope that you find them beneficial to your life, to your structure, to the internal guidance that is within. And I wish you guys a very beautiful transit. I hope that you find what it is that you are looking for within. And I shall see you in the next hexagram coming up very soon. Take care.